This is the Joe Mullins Show, celebrating the best place in the world to live, shop, work, and play. And now, your host, Joe Mullins.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and welcome to another beautiful weekend in the greatest state in the greatest country in the world. We're here in Florida, and we've got a very special guest today. She is one of the biggest reasons why this state is the best place to live, work, shop, and play. Today, joining us, we have got one of the greatest senators serving in the Senate right now. We have got the former Attorney General of Florida, Ashley Moody. Senator Moody today. We're going to call you, we got to go up and change it now. You are Senator Moody. Senator Moody, welcome to the show.
It is great to be with you, and I obviously love talking about the great state of Florida, my favorite topic.
You know, I got to ask you this. You've always had this pleasant smile. And I think a lot of people, when you were Attorney General, used to say, oh, she's a pushover. Look at her. They underestimated how strong you were. When you put on Mama Bear, I watched you many times remove prosecutors that were not doing their job, that were putting bad people back out on the streets. I saw you stand for the rights of the community. I know in Flagler alone, where I served as chairman of the commission, our sheriff, and between what you did and our sheriff, and I mean, law enforcement was just so well represented under you as Attorney General. What made you decide to make that change from Attorney General to Senator?
Yeah, that is a great question. And certainly it wasn't an easy one. You kind of laid it out for everyone. I became the Attorney General having served first as a federal prosecutor and a judge for over a decade. When I was asked to take on this Senate appointment and fill the shoes of Marco Rubio, that was a big decision, as you can imagine. I'm a fifth generation Floridian. My husband's still a law enforcement officer. I have a child in school. So I am still dealing with all of the backpack issues and the scheduling issues that all parents are. But my family was incredibly supportive. We made the decision, if we can make this work as a family, that it was worth getting up here to Washington and fighting for our state, just like I did during one of the biggest challenges during the COVID years, during the riots all across the country, during the Biden administration, when they were really making some disruptive and dangerous policy decisions. You know, Florida stood out because we fought back and won in court. We led on a lot of issues across the nation when, in fact, we were winning for Florida. We were trying to protect the autonomy of Florida and our ability to lead the way we wanted to lead on behalf of our people and to protect Floridians' rights. But in reality, it really affected the rest of the nation. Some of the wins we got benefited others across the nation during a time of big government, a time of lockdown, a time of what we're finding out now were often misdirected or unjustified mandates, guidance. It's really enlightening to see some of the documents we're now uncovering that, Florida stood up all along the way and said, we want to do what's right by our people for their health, safety, and welfare, but we can't forget that government was created first and foremost to protect the rights of our people. And you have to make every decision through that lens. And that is why we are now known as the free state of Florida. We're not known for flamingos as much anymore. We're now known for freedom. And I love that I was a part of that. And because of those successes, so many people have wanted to move here, and not just folks that want to start a business or raise their family or retire to Florida. Even our first responders, our heroes, are moving from other states where they're not appreciated, moving into the ranks of law enforcement in Florida. And I was so proud to be a part of that. And I think it's really what has set Florida up to now lead in so many areas, from entrepreneurship to education to tourism. I can go on and on. It truly is the Florida way. And when I got to Washington, one of my biggest goals was to make sure I was fighting up here for the same things we were fighting in Florida at the time, pushing back on big government, making sure we were protecting safety and rights of people. That is common sense. That is what has made this the greatest nation on earth. And I am one of the loudest, most persistent voices on that subject here in Washington, and we're already showing great success.
I say that smile, I tell people, don't let that smile fool you. She's got a strike to her if you do something wrong. And, one thing I'll say as commissioner, we got to serve at a very special time in Florida, like you were saying, when COVID hit. I was traveling around to the national committees, and counties all over the country were begging for money. They were begging for saying that they didn't have revenue to be able to pay the bills. And they looked at me and they said, I said, just open up and we'll do what we're doing in Florida. And they said, well, we don't want to step over the dead bodies that the media is saying y'all are doing in Florida. And I looked at the guy and I said, I just left Florida. I didn't step over any dead bodies. I said, I'll be honest with you. If I did that in Florida, I probably would hurry out and not come back. I said, I'm kind of freaked out about that. But we took a lot of criticism. They attacked us. They attacked our businesses. They attacked my personal family. They started saying we didn't care. And one of the things that made me stand strong as a commissioner was you as Attorney General. I remember running in, we talking at events, and you are constantly saying, hey, do not worry about what they say. Do not worry about them sending letters to us with the governor and talking about removing you guys. You guys are doing the right thing. And I was so confident when I left you that day. I turned around and I said, you know what? We're going to keep our beaches open because we have forefathers that stormed a beach so we can walk freely on them today. And we're not going to let our country hold us back. But that was done because of the leadership y'all had on the state level. We knew we had our back.
Yeah, and I used to say when we would see some of the insanity, and you think back and you almost forget that our kids were locked. I say I shouldn't say that. Kids in the nation were locked out of school for years. They shut down entire industries. I had to fight and go to court to open back up the entire cruise industry. It was still closed after a year and a half. They shut down churches. They shut down businesses. They picked which businesses got to keep working and keep their folks employed. I mean, folks were shut up in their homes. They chose not to go be with someone that might have passed. It was really tragic if you think about it. Now that we're on the other side, and what's so interesting at the time, I remember our state was getting so criticized. We even did a grand jury. I was the only, and have still been the only attorney general in the nation to do a grand jury to bring together folks from all walks of life, all political persuasions, just folks coming in to hear the facts. And they found some of the things that I talked about in one of our hearings last week, which was a lot of the guidance that was given out there. At the time, the people giving it knew there was no scientific basis for it. So the same guidance that was keeping businesses closed and schools shut down and folks away from their loved ones, they knew at the time there was not a substantial scientific basis for it. And now we're trying to drill down on that so that we can make sure that that does not happen again. I'm really proud of what Florida was able to achieve. Florida faces the same challenges, the same pressures that every other state faces. The only difference is we always go back to the purpose of government, what government is supposed to be doing, and probably most importantly, what it's not supposed to be doing. And I really have to give it to Governor DeSantis, who really showed strong leadership during that time. I was incredibly proud that he appointed me to this position. Grateful that the president has supported me in my efforts to keep this seat. And boy, I tell you, we haven't backed down. We just got an award about 2 weeks ago for Best Constituent Service in the entire nation after only 1 year in office. That has not been done. And I am incredibly proud to report back to my bosses, who are Floridians, that we have worked on thousands of cases on their behalf. And it's been recognized now by a bipartisan organization to show how hard they're working and how successful they've been in this new role.
That's why we started this show, because you guys we all were back then. And I feel like it's my family. We all got elected the same time. We all kind of got in office in 2018. It was a very special time, but the media, I was shocked when the media didn't portray what was really going on. It was my first opportunity to see how the media will take the great things like you do, the governor did, we did on a local level, and turn around and spin them to something negative, and really creating people to be very angry back then using that virus. You're in a very special time right now, and I got to ask you about this. Y'all have Fauci own testimony going up there, and is constantly just pleading the fifth. If you and I did something like that, we would be ripped apart by the media. The media has really been kind of laid back about it. They've not said a lot about it. Republicans have been strong, drilling in harder. What do you feel when you're sitting up there and you know the impact this man had on the world, not just the country, but the world? What do you feel up there when he starts pleading the fifth and not giving answers that the people of Florida and the people of the United States so truly deserve?
Yeah, again, I have a strong faith, and I am led by that. I love serving in this role because I truly, truly, truly feel like it uses everything in my background, from my time as a prosecutor, a judge, attorney general. I get to bring that with me, not just to committee hearings, but through a lens when I am voting on behalf of Floridians on any issue. And I'll tell you, it was incredibly frustrating. Yes, to watch him plead the fifth 111 times.
Wow.
But what was most frustrating for me was listening to every single Democrat that came to that hearing tell us why we shouldn't be having the hearing. And pretty much like lighting themselves on fire to prevent us from asking questions of a person who presented himself as the face of science during that time. And we know now that we have his private diary from the time, that many of the things that he was saying publicly was not, in fact, what he was doing, or was not reflective of the information he knew at the time. And we also, so it's not just related to guidance and mandates and whether that was justified or not. And again, in the diary, he criticizes our governor when our governor was asking questions and pushing back out on some of these things that were really oppressing businesses, our economy, our people, our families. And instead of engaging on those things, he just, within his private notes, was calling him names. It was really shocking. But set that aside for a moment. What was really concerning is there's also all of these other things that have happened since then, where there's indication that he may have approved gain of function research, which would have, increased the potency of the virus or the fatality of the virus, and the origin of where that virus began. And he may have had a hand in encouraging a decision or a revelation, one way or the other, where that began. I mean, his role and his potential influence on determining what the origin was, that is relevant to our review of what happened. I don't care what party you're from. Every family that was locked down for months, years of their lives probably wants to know that this isn't going to happen again. And the reason we can, let's just say they want to know we will do everything that we can to prevent it from happening again. And the only way you can do that is go back and review what happened. And so to me, it wasn't just that he took the fifth. And yes, there are a lot of people out there that are frustrated and angry, and lives were really, really wrecked. And so I don't blame them for that. But look at the other side of the aisle. Like, how do you come to a hearing in the United States Senate, the place where we are supposed to be the mouthpieces of Americans? We represent the people back home. We owe them transparency. We owe them accountability. The only way they get their questions answered is if I ask them, if we hold that hearing and I ask them. So yes, they want to know, why were these directives and mandates justified? And if they weren't, why did you say otherwise? They want to know, did our country, and specifically you, have a hand in encouraging this type of virus and gain of function? And did you have a hand in influencing the determination of where it came from by our intelligence agencies? Americans want to know that. They deserve to know that. And by darn, our Constitution is set up to make sure they're in charge. Americans, not the government. And so the fact that you had Democrats, senators come in and truly try to shut down, obstruct, complain, throw their hands up that we were even having the hearing, that was what frustrated me more than anything, because it's almost like we have lost a foundation in what we're here to do. And again, that is to be the mouthpiece and the policymakers on behalf of the American people. And I was very disappointed in how that played out.
Senator Moody, I come from a medical family. My brother started the largest burn center in the world. My father was part of HCA starting. And one of the things growing up I always heard in medical, you have to communicate. When a doctor does something good and breaks through, you've got to communicate to other doctors. You got to put it out there. You got to study it. You got to communicate. Never in that industry have they said to plead the fifth, not speak about it. It's so crucial we go back to that and we evaluate what happened so it doesn't happen again. I mean, I want our listeners to think about this. You brought up a very valid point. You brought up the stress and the dissension it brought up in our country. We were getting on airplanes being attacked by each other. We were going into grocery stores, except for Walmart. Walmart was okay and it was safe to go in. Grocery stores shut down. You couldn't order. I started thinking for a while there, DoorDash created this because they became just a staple now. But, they were one of the saviors to it. We had never seen what DoorDash was before that. We started ordering food because we couldn't go out. I remember in a commission meeting, I got up in the middle of a commission meeting. We had a group of residents come in and say, we don't want to wear this mask. And I had just left D.C. in front of Fauci and his group. And I said, the mask is protecting us from inhaling things, but what's protecting our eyes? It gets just as much germs. They told me, we're not perfect. Sit down. Don't worry about it. Just go with what we're saying. And I felt like, what in the world did they just say to us? So we're in that commission meeting. One of the commissioners gets up and screams for those anti-mask people to be arrested. The fight that broke out in there, I got up and said, you're not going to arrest constituents in our county for voicing their opinion. It was crazy. And then the media, of course, spun it around like these angry anti-maskers came in to risk to endanger everyone's lives. The fear that it put in everyone, and then to have this guy sit up there and plead the fifth, when all we want to do is go back and make sure this doesn't ever occur again, that's got to be pretty upsetting and damaging to us.
Yeah, I mean, really looking back on it, some of the stuff I had to litigate, they were trying to mandate that 2-year-olds had to wear masks outside while they played. I mean, again, I think what is necessary is for us to have a full and transparent accountability of what happened, how it happened, and did the government, that, by the way, works for the people, did the government handle it the way the people would have expected and wanted and in accordance with the law? And we need to have these discussions over and over until everyone is satisfied that we have closed any loopholes, we've shut down any ability for unjustified mandates and directives to happen in the future, so that we're better in the future, right? So I think one of the reasons I am so glad now, as frustrating as Congress is, as frustrating as the Senate is, and I could read you a list as long as my arm of my grievances with the Senate, there is a motivation, a passion to use all of that we did in Florida and make sure that we're following through to the very end on accountability. And as you know, we just this morning voted out of the Homeland Security Committee to hold Dr. Fauci in contempt for not answering questions. And again, that is on behalf of the American people to try and get to the bottom of this to prevent it from happening again. And I would just say to anyone out there who is in elected office, is in any type of position where they are serving others in their community, elected or not, following through keeping a consistent message and explanation, no matter getting attacked, being called names, whatever comes at you. I think what people want is for folks to just talk to them, give them the facts, and tell them, yes, these are hard problems. These are incredibly challenging decisions we have to make together as a people. And this is why I'm making this decision, or this is why I'm voting this way. This is why I am going after this agency and getting rid of this rule to benefit, these Floridians or this industry within Florida, whatever that may be. I think folks these days just want someone, no matter the incoming, will just keep having these frank conversations with them because we work for them.
Now, Senator Moody, what is it like dealing with the Democratic socialists up there? Tell me what it's like dealing in the experiences on that level, the national level, compared to what you've had to deal with in Florida, which really we've kind of suppressed it and it's not as prevalent down here.
Well, it's in Florida. I go back to how we started this. Florida is not immune. I just think Florida's done a good job of showing when you approach government in the way government is supposed to function, get out of the way, let people build their lives and build their businesses and provide for their families. Florida has shown that if you just stay true to how government is supposed to function, your state will thrive. And, they don't understand that. In fact, they want the opposite. The DSA, and those that are just listening can't see me, but I'm saying Democratic, with quotes around it, Socialists of America. You know what they stand for. And how do we know what they stand for? Not only is their co-chair going around telling you what they stand for, right? Abolish ICE, defund law enforcement, don't fund the military, break down the border, non-citizen voting, big government taking over private businesses. I could go on. And I'm not just making this up. The co-chair saying it, it's laid out right there in their platform. What's frustrating is the media and some Democrats will try and say, oh, well, that's just a silo of the Democratic Party. It's just this radical wing of our party. But look at how they're voting. They're voting lockstep with the DSA agenda. Just in the last 2 weeks, the Senate Democrats voted against military funding. That's been bipartisan as long as I can remember. Last year, they shut down the government for a historic amount of time, 3 times, because they didn't want to fund law enforcement. There's really no daylight between how the Democrats as a whole are voting and the radical wing of that party. And so Florida's not immune. In fact, I'm running against 2 people in the Democrat Party now. One was endorsed by Ilhan Omar, is trying out for the Socialist Squad like every day. And the other one called law enforcement fascist thug militia.
Wow.
So, pick whichever one you want that's going to stand up for the psycho-anarchists and vote that way. I don't think Florida's going to buy that at the end of the day. No matter who's selling that crazy agenda on the Democratic side, Florida's not going to buy that. And I tell you, just from my background, I can tell, I have seen firsthand, if you stay true to the fundamental principles of government, and that means answering to our bosses in a fundamental way when they say, you know what, we're struggling right now. We need to pay attention to that and have answers and plans. And yes, that's why I'm so proud we're doing things like, things that have never been done. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, child investment accounts, more school choice and resources going into that nationwide. You need to have answers on what you're trying to do to fortify families, to lift up families. But you also have to be mindful that what made this country great is keeping government out of people's lives, giving them the space to thrive, the opportunity to pursue happiness, protecting their rights. And at the same time, people forget this often, but safety and happiness is part of the Declaration of Independence. When they talk about preserving our God-given unalienable rights, they talk about safety and happiness. And Florida's got that right. That's why we are the most pro-law enforcement state in the nation, because we understand if you have a civilized, free society, you have to support the people that stand up to enforce the people's laws. It's as simple as that. And so as an attorney general, as the wife of a law enforcement officer, the oldest boy in our family is in the military, you better believe stepping up for common sense, strong national security, strong communities, safe communities, free communities. That's what I'm all about. That is the opposite of what the Democrats seem to be voting by. And you better believe I'm using that fierce voice of mine to stand up for Americans and specifically my constituents, Floridians, every single day in the U.S. Senate.
Well, when I watched it, this is something funny. I said the other day, we aren't immune from it. I've seen it all over. They're starting to change parties and pretend to be Republicans in Florida. But I think we're on to something. When they named the airport in Palm Beach Donald J. Trump, airlines were saying, if you don't want to fly into Florida, if you don't want to go in, we'll refund your money. I started thinking maybe we should name every airport in Florida Donald J. Trump and keep people out of here that don't want to come. If it offends you, we don't want you down here.
Well, maybe, it doesn't matter where I go in the nation. Half the room says, I'm planning to move to Florida. And the other half says, my family, my mother, my sister, they just moved to Florida. I'm a 5th generation Floridian. I love the state of Florida. I chose to raise my family in Florida. And it's an honor of the lifetime to now be the senator that represents Florida in the United States of America. So you better believe that I want to keep Florida, the Florida I grew up in, the Florida I know that attracts everyone here that wants to live in Florida. I want to maintain and preserve everything that makes our state great, from our environmental natural treasures to our tourism highlights that people come from all over the world to be a part of. I want to preserve Florida. And that is a challenge, as we have so many people wanting now to move there. I always joke and say people are shoving each other out of the way to get into Florida. And it does present its own challenges, right? We are now almost dealing with the issues of success because we did stand out. We did show that we are a remarkable state, that our people believe in freedom and prosperity and entrepreneurship. We are a unique state, and it is attracting folks from everywhere, but that does bring its own challenges. We have to make sure that we are paying attention to availability of housing. We have to make sure that we're paying attention to the adequacy of infrastructure. We have to make sure that we are paying attention to protecting our environment. And those are our challenges, yes, have always been there, but I do believe they're heightened when you have a surge of migration like we have seen because of our success. So you have to have leaders that are committed to following up and saying, not only patting yourselves on the back and saying, okay, maybe we didn't get everything perfect, but we tried to make the best decisions we could. And that has led to really enormous success in the state. And now you have to make sure we're dealing with the affects of success and making sure we're preserving the great state. And I know you and so many, especially folks like you that are on the air bragging about everything Florida has to offer, you expect that as well. I am mindful of that. I think everybody that is now holding themselves out to serve others should be talking about that, because I, like other people around the state, I want to keep Florida, Florida. And unlike some of my opponents that I'm running against now, one that just moved to Florida and wants to be the United States Senator, I care. And I want to pass along to my children the same Florida that I grew up in. And that's for the next generation to enjoy all it has to offer. So I appreciate you inviting me on today to talk about what makes our state so great, why everybody is moving there, and some of the reasons we made the decisions that we did during some really challenging times, and how now we're seeing that a lot of those decisions were right, not only in watching how Florida has succeeded, but in some of the evidence that's coming out now. That at the time, maybe we did stand strong for a reason. So thank you so much for having me on, and I look forward to getting back really soon.
Senator Moody, I want to say this real quick as we wrap up. $2 billion in FEMA funding, $1 billion in military for Florida, military veterans and bases, tax cuts like we've not seen before. You are truly one of the most productive senators we have ever seen in Florida. How can we, our listeners, support and keep you in office real quick? How can they get in touch with your...
Thank you so much for asking. It's truly my honor and pleasure to serve. Thank you for recognizing that. When I got here, there were so many outstanding FEMA claims due to Floridians. Yes, almost $2 billion. So proud of some of the work we've gotten done already in reversing regulations, strengthening our communities and our industries in Florida. I hope that folks will go to ashleymoody.com if they want to join some of my coalitions or help out or volunteer in any way on our campaign. We have just under 90 days to go. So it's an important time. It's an exciting time. I can only do this with the help of those back in Florida. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
I want to remind our listeners, Senator Moody, thank you for joining us today. Come this Tuesday, we're going to be voting to make sure that we keep strong leaders like Senator Moody in office. We need to get out. We need to vote if you hadn't already. But these are the kind of accomplishments that Florida needs to see to keep it the best place to live, work, shop, and play. Tune in any weekend to see our show. Also on YouTube, The Joe Mullins Show, or you can go to Instagram and view any of our past, present, and future shows. Thank you and have an amazing weekend. And remember, Florida is the greatest state in the world to live, work, shop, and play. Thank you and have a great weekend.
You've been listening to The Joe Mullins Show. Find out more and engage with Joe by visiting the website, themullinscompanies.com.